the starting lineup of your favorite show. At producer, 5'11" from Blanchester, the Cow Killer, Casey McCollister. And comic engineer, standing at 4'8", the pride of the West Side, Elliot Rearing. And your host, weighing 150 pounds, soaking wet, from Hamilton, Ohio, Ace Fowler.
All right. Pleasant Wednesday morning to you, and welcome to Off the Bench. This is presented by, as always, United Dairy Farmers, UDF for around these parts for short. And we come your way every single day, Monday through Friday from 10 to 12. Today it just happened to be 10:02. Here soon, it'll be 10. We'll get it right. There was a plethora of things, if you could use that word, of what happened last night in the world of sports, some pertaining to Cincinnati, some not so much. Local hoops, this area, had kind of what we'll call a split. The UC Bearcats, unfortunately, weren't able to get it done against the number 1 ranked Houston Cougars. Seemed to be a small arena that they have there as well. Maybe we get into that a little bit. Kind of a unique situation where maybe perhaps they don't see the need or the necessity to extend perhaps the seating arena. But it is packed in there. Maybe it gets loud. Should UC change exactly what they do in their arena? You seen a tweet the other day from Scott Springer suggesting perhaps that should be the case. I don't know. Usually at these Big 12 institutions, the student sections are down the sidelines. Not all of them, of course. And in fact, one of the biggest arguments as to why you wouldn't change it perhaps is in Allen Fieldhouse, which, again, maybe you could argue is the best arena or the best atmosphere in college basketball. The students don't sit on the sides. But something interesting to think about. Should the Champions Club down there at the old Fifth Third Arena change? Maybe we'll get into that towards the end of this show. But we have some drama, some late heroics, if you will. From another local team, if you can call it that, down in Lexington, the Kentucky Wildcats. They found a way to come back and win. We'll get into that, of course. But we have the Brenna-Men. Thom and Marty will join us right around the 10:30 mark. We'll ask them some things about not only local sports, but some other life advice. Because I could use some life advice here relatively soon, especially for this trip we're about to take. Those are two well-traveled men. I'd like to think they could offer maybe some guidance while we're on the road. They've been to Arizona quite a few times. Thom lived in Arizona. Marty's been going to Arizona at least for a short amount of time. We'll ask him about what he thinks about spring training. Did he like it better in Florida? Does he like Goodyear? We'll see what his opinion is of that and more. That's the Brenna-Men's right around 10:30. We'll talk Cincy sports there for who knows how long. There was a little bit of banter there before the show started about some Cincy sports. I said we need to stop, save it for the show. So we'll have that discussion probably right around the 11 o'clock hour. And then we'll wrap things up with any kind of call-ins that you may have. And, of course, the NFL. Because why would it be a sports talk show if you didn't talk NFL? Elliot, Casey, good morning. Men, as Thom would always say. I would just ask you, Elliot, was there anything last night that when you were sitting there and you were watching that UC Bearcats team play basketball, was there any moment that provided some excitement, any kind of optimism at all about this program?
I'm not gonna lie. I think I stopped watching right when they showed a little bit of life. I couldn't bear to watch it any longer.
You genuinely turned it off, or is this a bit?
No, I turned it off.
I don't believe it.
The last 5 minutes of the game, I did not watch.
I don't believe it.
Listen, when a team turns it over 20 times every game, there's only so many of them that you can watch. The nonstop lobs, every single thing they do offensively makes me sick. There was a point in the first half, and again, the Bearcats scored 17 points in that first half. And there was a point where we had, I'm not kidding you, 5 consecutive shots. And here's the thing. You can get rebounds on shots if you shoot them so bad that nobody knows where the ball's going. So, I mean, these bricks were hitting left side of the backboard, right side of the backboard. Nothing was hitting rim. And obviously you're able to get 5 shots, get the rebound, pop it again. They hit four. They shot 4 straight threes and then missed a layup in one single possession. And honestly, right there and then, I've had enough. We'll talk more about Bearcats later. But I've had it up to here with them. Yesterday, so I made reference to a crazy NBA ending yesterday regarding I think it was the Pistons.
Guess it was.
There was another one last night. So I believe it was the Mavericks taking on the Cavs, and with 2 seconds to go, P.J. Washington and the Mavericks take the lead. A layup in, you think it's over, wrong. And this is why I hate that play that coaches run. With 2 seconds in college now, it's a popular trend.
Yeah.
Do the full court Hail Mary Christian Laettner pass. I've never seen that play work. That play does not work. And colleges continue to run it, and I'll never understand it. But in the NBA, we got a guy that knows how to do it. So we got Max Strus. He inbounded the ball to Evan Mobley. Mobley passes the ball back to Strus, all with 2 seconds. And from 59 feet out, Max Strus hits perhaps one of the craziest shots I've seen, Casey. I'm not going to lie. It was I saw a stat on it. It's the second longest shot in NBA history, game winning. I don't know what the first one was. I'll have to go back and research that. But it's the second longest in NBA history. Shout out to the Cleveland Cavs. Here's the shot. Inbound, boom. Swished it. He swished it from 59 feet away to win the game. At home, by the way. So I can't even imagine the vibes when your team hits a shot like that. I think I've been on the receiving end of that at UC a time or two when the opposing team does that to me. But shout out to the Cleveland Cavs. A crazy ending there. My Toledo Rockets, I don't mention them a lot, but if we're throwing Dayton on here, I'm going to put my Toledo Rockets on here. Toledo Rockets were upset at home by 16-point underdogs, Northern Illinois, 75-72. It looks like the streak of not making the tournament for 40 years is gonna stay true. 1980 was the last time the University of Toledo made the NCAA tournament. Tough scenes. 20th ranked San Diego State. They beat San Jose State in a game that nobody watched and nobody cared about, 72-64. 22 ranked Utah State. They hung on to beat Fresno in overtime, 77-73. Mountain West, man, what a conference. Texas, they crushed Texas Tech, 81-69 in Lubbock. Dayton, this is the Dayton news of the day. They beat David Sun 80-66. They should. They're significantly better than every team in that conference. Any loss in there is an embarrassment. Number 7 ranked Kansas. They had won 19 in a row at Fog Allen Fieldhouse before BYU last night waltzed in and took care of business. BYU upsets Kansas 76-68. Kansas seems to lack a little bit of depth. I'm not going to lie. I watched some of these Kansas games, and I don't know. I guess they're all hurt or something like that. They don't have a lot of players. But that's it for Kansas. And here's a good one. 16th ranked Kentucky. They were 5-point underdogs yesterday on the road against Mississippi State. But Reed Sheppard, he takes it to the hole and wins it himself for Cal, for the city, for the state. Shout out to, you know what, Calipari. Somebody tweeted, I think it was Kyle tweeted at me this morning, and he said, you know, he really wanted, what would it take for the fan base to get back in on Kentucky? And I tweeted at him. I said, you got to fire Cal. You got to clean house. But it looks like Reed Sheppard is going to keep Cal hired for one more day. So here it is, Mississippi State, Kentucky.
Big time shot by Mississippi State as well here. I mean,
Well,
let's
sure.
let's not downplay that shot. That's
a great
big time shot. And my thing is, like, Reed Sheppard's asking for the ball right here, like screaming for it, and you decide not to give it to him, which I guess it all ended up working out in the end. But that's a difficult shot, man.
Ooh.
Good for Reed Sheppard. Some didn't think Reed Sheppard was going to be very good. Just wanted you to know that. I don't know. Some people were suggesting that Reed
Who are
Sheppard
those
was
people?
very, very overrated. I can't name names. But there were certain people that were thinking to themselves before Reed Sheppard entered the campus, that is the University of Kentucky, that he was going to be an overrated bum.
I don't know if I've heard any of the slanderous comments from anybody regarding
It's certainly been a thing. Really quickly before we omit anything,
sure.
There was a big time ending out there in the Mountain West that you keep slandering. I don't know why you keep slandering
Because
this
you
conference.
slander it.
This conference,
You slander it.
they've been nothing. They get 4, 5, 6 tournament teams in every single year. I don't know why you slander these guys, Elliot. But they had. I know it was late. You probably didn't see it. Colorado State was playing Nevada. Nevada's on the road against Colorado State, who's a great team. Colorado State, fantastic team. Probably will end up being one of a higher seeds that are given out for this Mountain West Conference. If you did not see it, copyrights are already out the window. So at this point, let's just let it rip.
That's right.
Show the people what they want. They want to see the half-court buzzer beater.
I actually had money on this game. I had money on Nevada.
Oh, that is a hard bank, too.
It's a hard bank. I'll tell you what, that does not go in at the playgrounds when they have the double rim.
And this is why – no, it does not. That's a good point.
Yep, that's why I'm here.
Again, you see stuff like this, and then you look at the half-court, full-court passes that I'm seeing.
You keep bringing this up every single time.
It's preposterous. If there's like 0.4 seconds, I get it. If there is 2 seconds left – inbound the ball at half court and take your chances. It's not crazy to say a college kid, an NBA player, can hit a half court shot. It's not that hard. It's really not. I've seen 2 of them from fans at UC games this year. They should get scholarships on this Bearcats roster.
I don't know. Mick used to call for people asking for the football team kids to try out.
Well, that was Mick. God bless Mick. All right, Houston, we already talked about it. We'll talk about it later. They beat the Bearcats 67-59. They did cover. I didn't think the Bearcats had a chance in hell at a cover, but they covered 13 points. The Reds and the Cubs, they showed their support for FC Cincinnati yesterday by tying. Final score 6-6. Frankie Montas, the long-awaited debut, he went 2 innings, 2 Ks, didn't allow a base runner. Connor Phillips had a similar outing, 2 innings, 2 Ks, did allow a base runner via the walk, still looked great. Some other notes regarding spring training. Candelario has yet to have a hit so far this spring, while Will Benson continues to tear it up. He had another 2-hit game yesterday. The Vikings general manager, he said that trading Justin Jefferson has never crossed their minds.
Yeah.
Never. Thoughts on that?
I mean, it shouldn't. It shouldn't cross their minds unless somebody makes an offer that makes it cross their mind. And if he's the best wide receiver in the game, or if you think he's one of the best wide receivers in the game, I'd like to think that you could get something for him. Can we just call a spade here? The Vikings are dead. The Vikings are dead. They don't have a quarterback. They're not a very good roster as a whole. Why continue to pander to the idea that you're not going to move off of anybody when you have a dead franchise? It seems like a bad move.
There are some reports that Kirk wants to come back. He wants to run it back.
Okay. Because that's worked before.
Well, that's fair. If they trade Jefferson, that probably would be organizational malpractice, though. But
no, it wouldn't. If they get something in return, it would not.
I don't know. When you have the best at something, don't trade them.
What? If you're so far away, like if you're terrible, if you're a terrible, if you know you're not going to be a team that's going to compete for a championship, the Vikings are not that. Then I think you could justify the idea of moving off while you still have some value there. You have something you need to trade away. It's like for lack of a better term and a terrible analogy of the day, let's just say, for instance, you have a very, very nice house, right?
Sure.
And you have your house is mostly paid off, if not paid off. And then all of a sudden there's a family catastrophe that happens. And you come to realize that, you know what? There's other things that are more important than this bell and whistle that I have, which I understand this nice big house. I can go and I can downgrade. I can live in a one-bedroom studio, or I know a one-bedroom studio is a little oxymoronic, but I can find a studio apartment. I can find something that's more affordable, and then obviously recoup something on the back end of this to where I can start to get some more life necessities that I might need. That's what I'm getting at. That was the best, most eloquent way of stating an analogy that's ever been had. But I hope. I do know this. People understand the point that I'm trying to make here, and I think that's where the Vikings are at.
Okay, that's fair. Listen, that was very intelligent, and I listened.
I don't think it was intelligent.
And I listened all the way through.
Semi-common sense. That's a lie.
Zach Taylor, he had some comments yesterday that you're going to hear about in about a minute. But he basically said that T. Higgins was never going to be traded. They're not going to let him. He was never going to be not tagged. They were never just going to let him walk out the door for free. And he also said that he is not going to give up play calling anytime soon. So that should bring some life into this Bengals fan base. Here's Zach Taylor.
Back for maybe at least another year.
Well, just again, how he goes about his work. Number one is something that I really respect, and I think all of our entire building respects. Number two, just the type of receiver he is. Big body, great body control, tremendous speed down the field, but great body control to transition out of those breaks. And so again, he's one of the top receivers in this league, and we don't want that just walking out of the building. And so when you get an opportunity to whatever it is, put a tag on him and keep him in the building and let him play at least another season for us, I think that's critical.
I think after the season, I don't remember which week, but I saw a tweet that Lab had said that he had heard that you were maybe considering giving up play calling. Was that accurate? Were you ever considering that?
No, I like the process we have going right now, and now it's a new challenge. You know, with Dan stepping into that and Brad moving in the quarterback role, it's going to be good. It's going to challenge us. It's going to be a little bit different, but those guys are prepared, and specifically Dan. Dan's been ready for this for a long time now, and really turned down a lot of interviews last year to stay here, not knowing if Brian would still be in the building or not, and then had a lot of opportunities this year, and so we were able. The timing really was perfect that Brian got the first job available before Dan could go get in the airplane and go some of these spots, and so we're fortunate. I can't wait to see what he can bring to the table for us.
So that is Zach Taylor. I'm sure Bengals Nation is enthused with him saying that he was never going to give up play calling. He likes this current situation, wouldn't change a thing. I would change a couple things, but that's just me after you missed the postseason. But to each their own. When your quarterback goes down, what can you really expect? Caleb Williams said he will be excited to be drafted by the Bears, or will be excited if the Bears trade the pick and he gets drafted by somebody else. So it doesn't look like we're going to have a player holdout.
No Eli Manning action this time.
No Eli Manning action. And really, if you do the Eli Manning, I think
worked out for him. It worked out for Eli Manning. Worked out for John Elway. Worked out for John Elway. It's worked out a few times. You can't say that it's a terrible thing to do if you're the clear number one guy that everybody wants.
It's a big gamble. But
what did the Bears do to make him change his mind? Because there for a minute he was acting like if the Bears were going to draft him, he decided he was just going to go back to USC, which is kind of laughable. But hey, he said that out loud. Something's changed.
Maybe a money thing. I don't know.
Probably.
I don't know. But shout out to Caleb Williams. So he's not going to be a prima donna and leave the Bears if they draft him. FedEx is breaking their naming rights deal with the Washington Commanders 2 years early. Partnership lasted 24 years. That's tough. I guess they are tired of being the sponsor of the world's biggest joke. And shout out to the Washington Commanders because they certainly have lived up to that title. The Falcons are emerging as the number one trade partner for Justin Fields and have been pushing to get a deal done. Man, that organization just doesn't know how to get it right, do they?
The Falcons had a chance to have Lamar Jackson last year, right? I mean, unless that's again another thing to clear up here. Supposedly, Caleb Williams saying that he was going to go back to USC if he got drafted by the Bears was a fake quote. So fake news here on possibly OTB, according to Harrow. Which can you phonetically in the chat please put Harrow how we're supposed to say that?
He's done it multiple times.
Hero,
I forget.
Harrow. It's on us. We'll get it right this last time. I'll make sure that I remember for basically eternity. That's what I'll remember about how you actually say this. But my point is that regardless, the Falcons now had a chance last year, supposedly according to rumors, to go out and get Lamar Jackson if they were willing to pay up. They decided not to do that. And then it turns out now they're in the Justin Fields sweepstakes. Casey loves that roster. So actually, if you're a Justin Fields believer, now, again, I don't know how many are or how many are not, but Casey, if you are a Falcons fan and you get Justin Fields, are you all the way back?
That depends on if you're a Justin Fields believer.
Are you a Justin Fields believer, Casey?
Here's the thing.
Boy, you are a politician with this. I tell you what, I've never seen more flippity-flop people in this room about it. Reed, you. The only people that have taken a stance on this, and I don't know what, I'll let Elliot once and for all take a stance on this, but the only people that I know have taken a stance on this, I think the guy is a certified bum fidget spinner. He's never going to ultimately be a great quarterback in this league. He's not. He doesn't have it in him to be a great quarterback. That's my, of course, personal opinion. There's nothing personal against him. Okay, I'm sure he's a great kid, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think he's a very good quarterback. Unbelievable athlete, great running back. Sean Spurlock, he's on the take that he thinks that he's great. So those people I can respect because there's actually a very clear line in the sand on what side of the aisle they stand on. What is it exactly? Where do you stand, Casey? I need to know.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Let me just share.
Well, then tell me. I mean, what are we doing?
Tell us.
Let me just share. Let me set this up. Okay.
All right. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Politician.
Here, Justin Fields in the last 20 games has 3,600 passing yards, 1,300 rushing yards, almost 1,400, and 35 total touchdowns. Lamar Jackson in that same span has 4,200 passing yards, 1,000 rushing yards, and only 32 total touchdowns. Sounds like a very similar quarterback to me. And if you're going to tell me that he's going to have bigger, better weapons that have longer range, bigger wingspans, like Drake London, like Kyle Pitts, guys like Bijan Robinson that are dynamic at the running back position, an offensive line that loves to go downhill, loves to run. I think that that's a really good opportunity for Justin Fields to really shine in. Now, I don't know if I necessarily believe him as a true pocket passer, but if you're going to tell me that he's going to be like year 1, year 2 Lamar Jackson, year 2 Lamar Jackson was an MVP, and he just ran all over the league. But he wasn't a great passer at that time yet. He wasn't a great pocket passer like he is now. So, I mean, if you get that out of him and that defense in Atlanta, they might be one of the best teams in the NFC.
Maybe, but here's the thing. I am a Justin Fields believer. I think he was put into a terrible situation. I think his offensive line stinks. I think his weapons stink. He was given DJ Moore. I'll give him that. But again, I don't think
it's always someone else's fault with him. It's always someone else's fault.
Is Bryce Young a bust?
I mean, listen.
Is Bryce Young a bust?
I wouldn't say he's a bust, but he played. This is his very first year. His very first year.
How many years has he been in the league? 3?
Yeah, that's a pretty big difference.
I mean,
I hate to break that to you.
No, it is.
But it's a pretty big, sizable difference. Year 3 versus rookie year.
I don't know. I think you give it until he finishes out the contract. I don't think Justin Fields is a fine quarterback.
All right.
But if you're the Falcons, I think it's preposterous to go out and go with question mark A to question mark B. Go out and draft a quarterback and try to be good for the future. Don't get Justin Fields. I think that's a horrible play. And finally, in news around the league or around sports, MVS from Kansas City, he has been released to save $12 million in cap space. Good for the Chiefs because Valdez-Scantling really didn't do a ton for them.
Dropped a lot of balls, huh?
Dropped a lot of balls. Him and Kadarius Toney. Best ball droppers in this area.
Are you a big advocate against cutting guys that drop balls? Is that what you're suggesting?
Correct. I am.
Interesting.
I think that's a fair take.
That's a fair take. All right, the Brenna-Mens will be with us here in just a moment. I'm sure maybe we can even expand upon this a little bit, perhaps with them. But with the 2 buzzer beaters from last night, I started thinking, what were some of the best endings that I've seen or that I've been a part of? Now, I know that there's going to be some people in the chat. They're going to be like, oh, my gosh, what about the Doug Flutie miracle, Hail Mary, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't see that live, or I wasn't really a part of that, so I'm not going to include that into the ones that I've kind of been a part of. But my list goes like this. I want to see if you guys want to add any in, and then I think we should try to take our top 4 of that list. Maybe the Brenna-Mens decide which top 4 we decide to put on the chat.
Okay.
But I have Malcolm Butler's interception.
Sure.
I think that is one of the top endings of all time. Chris Jenkins wins the national championship for Villanova. Now, I know Marty's not going to be a big fan of that because that was against his beloved Carolina Tar Heels.
Sure.
You have the kick 6 with obviously the Iron Bowl.
That's fine.
Boise State's Statue of Liberty play. Thom was there for that. You had, and this is where you lose me. You wanted to add the David Freese home run in the World Series to extend the World Series.
There's not a bigger moment in baseball that he could have done there. I mean, they're legitimately, you're in the World Series and it's to extend the series. I would say that's a pretty damn important walk-off home run.
Yeah, it just didn't do it for me. Carlos Gonzalez, if we wanted to have a baseball walk-off / exciting moment was that I remember David Ortiz's home run against the Yankees. I don't know what game that was. It was a game 3, perhaps, I believe. That was an exciting thing, I remember. But more exciting, I guess, was Carlos Gonzalez's walk-off for me, if you wanted to have a baseball moment. But the other one seemed to trump kind of the other exciting moments, if you will, more so than David Freese's home run. And I think it has to do with my bias. If David Freese, maybe if he was playing for any other team besides the Cardinals, and the Cardinals are one of those teams where you respect the Cardinals because of what they've done, but you hate them because you're not them. Is that fair, Elliot?
That's 100% fair. The biases are alive and well when you're talking about that stuff. So
yeah. So if you have any suggestions on which,
well, I'll name
of
a
the
few.
4,
I'll name a few.
You're gonna add a few. You want to add a few?
Yeah. Well, if that's okay with you,
of course it's okay.
You don't
with
like
me.
David Freese walking off in a World
No, I
Series
don't.
game, but
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers versus the Lions. I know that's a regular season game, but one of the crazier plays I'd say in NFL history is that Hail Mary.
Even his best throw.
Aaron Rodgers versus the Cardinals. This one's forgotten.
Still not even his best
that's a
throw.
good one too.
But Aaron Rodgers was in his own end zone, I think on like 4th and 20. Hits a 50-yard Hail Mary to what's that guy's name? Who's the bum that caught those 2 passes? I'm going to forget it.
Starts with a J.
I'm going to forget it. He threw it once to the guy to get it to midfield, and then once again in the end zone to send it to overtime. They lost the game because of the NFL overtime rules. But that was one of the crazier ends ever. We have the Dolphins versus the Patriots. I think I forget which running back was the one responsible for the big run, but the Patriots had Gronk back on defense, hoping they would go for the Hail Mary route. They didn't. They did the lateral play, got into the end zone. Aaron Boone, ALCS, walk
that
off
big time knuckleball. Tim
So
Wakefield.
yeah, I think there's a lot of great ones, great walk-offs.
So to clarify, you can only have a play if it was the game-ending play, right?
It
I
seems
think
as
of
if
like the
that's-
Tyrese Hill or the Tyrese.
Tyreek, is that what you're looking for?
No, the Giants receiver, the
Oh,
bubblegum
yeah,
catch,
yeah.
Tyrese.
Yep.
And then I think of like the Julian Edelman like bobbling the ball when he's being tackled by 3 guys.
Jeff Janis, by the way, I needed to remember.
That was say I had J.
You had the J.
Couldn't,
Jeff
couldn't get the rest of it.
Jeff Janis.
All right. Maybe we'll get some opinions from folks that are smarter than us on which of those that we just brought up, perhaps that they think should be our top 4. I'll read them off if they did not hear that before they came on. But we're gonna welcome the 2 men that hopefully will bring entertainment. Many people have been missing you two. I don't know if you know that. I don't know if you believe that. But Marty, Thom, welcome on to this humble abode that we try to call a show.
Thank you very much, Trace. Thank you. Nice to be back with you.
That's right. Thom, how you doing? You doing all right there?
I'm doing good. You know, you were talking about those endings. My dad called one of the greatest endings.
I can't hear
time.
Thom
I
at
don't know
all.
if it was one of the top 5 or top 4 you had there. And by the way, I don't hear my dad, and I don't think he hears me.
I think Casey's working.
I hear you now.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Okay.
got you now.
He called the Christian Laettner shot to beat Kentucky at the buzzer in the NCAA tournament.
Well, that's a funny thing you bring up because Elliot's done nothing but slander that play since we started this show. He believes that too many colleges decide to try to throw the ball down the floor anymore instead of just inbounding it, somewhat near the basket and letting the kids shoot from half court. He believes that essentially the Christian Laettner play is a terrible play. Marty, do you have anything to add to that before we kind of started getting into some relatively hard-hitting topics here?
Yeah, let me preface my answer to that stupid statement by Elliot by saying I'm already tired about this greatest walk-offs in the history of friggin' sports. If you're going to do it by sport. Don't do it. And everybody forgets. Everybody forgets the home run, the shot heard around the world in 1951 because none of you people were around. I was when Bobby Thompson hit the home run off Ralph Branca to send the Giants into the World Series on a National League playoff game. That's the single biggest walk-off in the history of sports. In terms of Elliott completely misses the whole concept of what happened when Leitner hit the shot to beat Kentucky. Had Rick Pitino played the inbounds pass, which he did not, then that pass would have been much more difficult to make and maybe would never even have made it. But Rick Pitino, who fashions himself as the greatest coach in the history of the game, he still maintains that if he had to do it again, he would have played the inbounds pass from Grant Hill to Leitner. That's certainly one of the greatest plays in the history of college basketball in a game that many people much more knowledgeable about the damn game than Elliott is will tell you that may well be the single greatest college basketball game ever played. That's all I got to say about it.
Fair enough. Let's stay on the topic of college basketball here because let's see if I get both of your opinions on this. Based off of X.com, Marty, UNC basketball seems to be a very, very topic of conversation usually for you. You're very passionate on there. You love college basketball. You seem to obviously have days in which you like to get on the head coach there. For folks that are part of UC fandom, they're starting to kind of come around to this notion of whether they're starting to fall off the bandwagon of West or not. How many years do you think is fair for a guy to take over a program and to be at a program before you start to say, you know what, this is all on him? Is there a year mark? Is there other caveats to that? What's your opinion on that situation?
I'd say 3 to 4 years. Maybe that varies a little bit now because of, if you hit the jackpot in the transfer portal, you can become an instantaneous top 10 team in the nation from one year to the next. So the whole thing has changed to some extent. And I can understand UC fans because they're just like every other fandom covering every other program in the country. They're front runners. They expect to win. But my response to them is, one, I'd give him more time and quit bitching about the fact that they're not winning, because I still maintain they are one really good offensive player away. When you go back and look at their schedule, the games they've already played and the games that they have lost, come back and tell me how many losses in those games were more than 10 points. I think the majority of the losses that they have incurred, especially against good ball clubs. I mean, they played the number one team in the nation last night and lost by, 8 or 9? I think you have to look at the whole situation, and I would certainly say that, let's see what happens in terms of newcomers into the program next year, because they've got to have some people that can shoot the ball. And so I'm not as upset and concerned about the basketball program. I'd be more concerned about the damn football program right now than I would be the basketball program. But I have great faith in Wes Miller, and I say that with all understanding that I'm very prejudiced because he's a Carolina guy. I'm a Carolina guy. I think he deserved the job that he got here in Cincinnati, and I think if given the amount of time that is fair, I think he'll make this a winning program in a very tough conference.
Tom, same question to you, but you have some UC fans that point towards the team across the way in Xavier, and they say to themselves, well, you have a situation where Sean Miller comes in, he takes over a team, he finds some kids out of the transfer portal, and the next thing you know, they're in the NCAA tournament his first year there. Now, obviously, those two situations might not be exact, but what would be the pushback or your belief in Wes Miller, Tom, on the situation that he has at hand right now with his program?
Well, I mean, I think what my dad just said is spot on. I think the one thing Wes Miller had, or rather Sean Miller had last year, forgive me, is he had a go-to guy when it mattered in nut-cutting time. So they boom. I mean, this guy was one of the top scorers in the conference. UC doesn't have a player on their team right now that's one of the top scorers in the conference. They have guys capable of being that one day, but they're not there right now. So Boom had that. They had two really good big men. They had a nice team last year. I mean, they got to the Sweet 16. That was a nice team. This UC team, I'm spot on with my dad. Although I think, I can't decide whether it's harder or easier to build a good program anymore. And you've heard different things from different coaches that I have a lot of respect for, Pitino being one of them, is that not only are you recruiting the players out of high school, okay, and then you're recruiting in the transfer portal, but basically at the end of every year, you're re-recruiting the guys in your own program for them not to enter the transfer portal. And I think that has become a very, very serious challenge. And I think it's why you're going to see some coaches in football, college football, if they get the opportunity, they're going to move on to the NFL. And that to me tells me it's got to be harder, because it's one thing to have to recruit. It's another thing to have to recruit a kid for 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years that's already inside of your own program.
All right, fair enough. Shifting gears here quite significantly. You have every time this part of the year, you have a certain part of this fan base that is the Cincinnati Reds. They want to bring up where spring training is held. You have obviously a lot of people that used to make that trip down to Florida and Sarasota to be able to enjoy spring training. Now it's moved over to Goodyear in Arizona. Marty, you've kind of had the chance to see both sides of the aisle, if you will. What's your take on the fans that kind of wish it was back in Florida? Is it the franchise's responsibility to cater towards the fans and their preference on where they would like it to be so they can enjoy it? Or do you think it's just strictly business? Let's put this where it makes the most sense for our franchise and our team to get ready for the start of the year.
Trace, I think it's the latter. Certainly, I think they'd love to have the fan base in Goodyear that they had in Sarasota, because Sarasota and Bradenton and all the other towns that surround that part of the state of Florida are people, a huge amount of people who have retired down there from Southwest Ohio. So they had a built-in fan base when they moved there initially. In Arizona, obviously not so much. I think if you took a poll of the fan, the real baseball fan would say, I wish they were back in Sarasota. And that would be because of the easier accessibility to getting down to Sarasota as opposed to getting on a plane or driving all the way out to Goodyear, Arizona to watch their favorite team play. But I think at the end of the day, I think and the other thing is you got to consider what kind of deal you're getting, what kind of facility they are building for you. And what do you benefit from being wherever that town may be located in Florida or Arizona, who's courting you and going all out in order to get you to come to their community and play your spring training games. I love Arizona. I went out there with a chip on my shoulder because I didn't think there was anything like Sarasota, Florida. And at the end of the day, I'm fully convinced, and have been for a long time, that the best place to get ready for a major league season is Arizona, as opposed to Florida. The weather's better, less chance, obviously, of rain, the proximity of teams to each other, as opposed to Florida. I think hands down Arizona is the best place to train.
All right, Thom, we're going to make that track all the way out there here next week. Do you have any, for a man that has lived there, is very well known in regards to what's surrounding that area, you have a guy here in Elliott who I think I've asked him, he's really excited to hike. I think that's what he's looking forward to the most. He wants to get out there on the range. Marty, you're not allowed doing that.
I'm sorry.
But I was going to ask, is there anything that you think that we should do, because we're going to vlog all this, we're going to video it all. Is there anything that you think that people would like to see have maybe Elliott go do while we're out there in the Phoenix area?
Well, I mean, if he wants to go hiking, you can't go wrong there. I mean, that's as good a place as there is on the planet, outside of maybe some of the places in Utah and maybe some of the Zion National Forest and those places. But Arizona's got a lot of places very close to Goodyear that you can go out and go do all that. I would like to see Elliott. There's a difference between when you get on a golf course, and my dad certainly can attest to this. The primary difference between Arizona golf and Florida or Midwest or even California golf is what's called transition, which is a fancy word for desert. Okay? When you hit out of the rough at Houston Woods, it's tough. It's tough. But when you're hitting half of your shots, and it might be more than that for Elliott, Dad, tell me if you agree, he's going to be hitting out of the transition. And I think the video of that in and of itself might be worth all of the production value that you're going to be spending time on and man hours on while out in Arizona.
Interesting. I come on this show and I expect to have fun with friends and be welcomed in with love and care. But all the Brenna-Men family does is just attack little old Elliot. Well, I got a couple questions for you, Casey. I believe I have a graphic for Thomas Brenna-Men. Tom, I saw this on X.com, and this is your friend Elon. His website, he allowed it, and I wanted to just show it to you. Ohio State has self-reported 4 recruiting violations. Would you say it's good to see a team cheat the right way, like Ohio State has done?
Well, I mean, you got to define what the cheating is here. I mean, they're reporting themselves, so there must have been something that happened that they obviously think is against the rules and they shouldn't have done it. So, yeah, I think there is a difference between, you found this out, you come clean on it, and you lay it out there and say, hey, we did this, our mistake. You guys decide what to do now, as opposed to that team up north. And we knew all what was going on there the last 3 years. And you had to have people come out and, beat down doors to find out the truth.
That's fair. That's a fair point. I guess that's my last Ohio State question. I just wanted to make it known that I just wanted to make it known that it seems like Michigan and Ohio State, they both they both cheat a little bit, but that's okay. Ohio State reports their cheating, and that makes it all the better. I have a couple. Yeah. You guys were slandering my golf game. Would you say that if
nobody slandered your golf game?
What do you mean?
Nobody did. Nobody did. We just like to say we'd like to see you hitting out of the transition rather than the rough. Because
I believe
there was that video of last year where you're literally picking up a tree of a branch that had fallen. You physically moved this tree, limb,
per the rules,
to go hit a ball.
You
can't
rules.
do that in a tree. You can't move a cactus in the rough.
Oh, Tom, you don't know my will to shoot an 89. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if there's a cactus in my way, I am moving it. Thorns and all, needles and all. I move it. But that's fine. If you guys want to slander my golf game, you're saying I'm going to play 90% of my shots in the rough, that's okay. I'll let you guys do that. I've got a couple just general questions for you. You guys are big travelers. What's your favorite road trip snack? You guys got a favorite road trip snack when you're heading out there?
I like Cheetos.
You like Cheetos? That's I like that one.
I like Cheetos and Fritos. They're my two favorites.
They rhyme.
Yeah, I'm more of a peanuts guy.
You're a peanuts guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. All right, a couple other questions. Marty, this one's for you specifically. You seem, and this is don't take any offense to this. You seem like a guy when you're flying on planes. As soon as that plane lands, you're gonna start the slow clap, and you're gonna get all the people going with a little clap that we all landed safely, and then you're gonna be the first one to stand up. Is that true?
I may be one of the first to get up, but I'm sure as hell not sitting there clapping my hands.
That's fair. Let's see. Is there any other questions I had? Okay, I have a couple. I'm going to get serious questions. We're having too much fun. This is a very serious sports talk show. I'd like to get serious. If you guys take away anything from spring training, so we're watching guys take 2 at-bats, 3 at-bats a game, maybe if we're lucky. What do you take away from spring training, if anything? Because I don't think this really makes or breaks a guy's career, unless I'm wrong. But let's say Candelario, a guy we went out, free agent. He doesn't have a hit yet this spring. Are we going to overreact to that, or is this just part of the workout process?
Tom?
Dad, go ahead, Dad.
That's a good question, Elliot.
Thank you.
You ought to write that down and make that one of the top 10 questions you've ever asked.
All right, I'm going to do it.
I would say that, I'm sure there are going to be fans, if you're going to use Candelario as an example, I'm sure there are going to be fans that, if he bats 125 in spring training and maybe hits one home run the whole spring, people are going to send up the flag and threaten to jump out of a 30-story window and all grades of bad things. But I don't think that spring training really means a whole lot other than getting ready to play. And if you have any power to do it, you don't. But you have to hope like the Dickens that come opening day, all your key people are healthy and they're ready to go. I never put a lot of stock in how bad a spring has had. Just like I've never put a lot of stock in a guy batting 425 for the spring. Yeah. I think that's all well and good, but he's facing pitchers that are working on things, and in many cases working on things right up until the beginning of the season. So I don't put a lot of stock in that stuff.
That's fair. And a follow-up question from that for Thom here. If there was a rookie that potentially could, or maybe it's not even possible, because there's certain journalists in the city, and I won't name them here, but they're basically saying that no job is safe, no job is certain. Is there a rookie that could potentially lose their job this spring because of a performance during, like what Marty just said, it's an exhibition type style games? Is that even a possibility that one of these rookies can lose their job here?
Well, I suppose anything's a possibility, but
Yeah.
do I believe for 5 seconds that the Reds are going into spring training asking Ellie De La Cruz or asking Matt McLain? Now, they're two very different players and success levels from a season ago. The flash of De La Cruz, the rock-solid consistency of McLain. But, no, I don't think that any of those guys, Marte, Encarnacion Strand, Cruz, McLain, Steer to a lesser extent, but none of those guys are going into spring training having to hit 320 and lose their jobs. They're too talented. This is the core of the team. Does that mean not one of them will be sent down for maybe one reason or another, which we don't see right now? Maybe they're not healthy in McLain's case, which he's not right now. They keep telling us he's going to be all right, but we'll see. And you know how I feel about that. But no. And I don't, to your first question of my dad, I don't put any stock, good or bad, on what a guy's doing in spring training, nor do I put any stock on what a guy does in the month of September, a young player that's called up. Because by and large, you're facing in those games in September a lot of pitchers who are just being brought up like you are from the minor leagues, and you're not facing day in and day out regular, big-time, accomplished, consistent, starting major league pitchers.
It's fair.
All right, final question here before we get you out of here. We know you got to run. We appreciate you coming on here, and hopefully we can make this a nice, lovely tradition here on Wednesdays as we have before. But one more somewhat serious question here before both of you go, and I'll leave both of you to answer this in your own way. If you could pick one player on this Reds team, let's call it an X factor, whatever term you'd like to use, that you could guarantee, hypothetically guarantee they're going to play at or above what is come to be expected of them, who would you choose to do that and why? Marty, we'll start with you.
Well, I think if I had to pick one guy, I would probably pick Candelario because he's been around the block. He is a veteran presence on this club. I would have to go with him as opposed to any of the guys that were rookie players in 2023. I hear so many people talking about how this club is a lead pipe cinch to be an impactful club. I believe it is, but I think there's a caveat to that, and that is the term sophomore jinx. And we've seen it happen time and time again. The most recent example from the Reds' perspective is Jonathan India. He was Rookie of the Year the next year. For whatever the reason, injuries, whatever the case might be, he did not have the year that he had the year before. All of these kids came together last year. These kids have to perform at or better than what they did last year in order for this ball club to be as successful as everybody thinks it can be. Nobody's willing to talk about the sophomore jinx because they don't want to say, well, you're being negative. No, I'm being a realist. These kids got to perform. But if I had to pick one guy, I'd pick Candelario because of his experience and his track record.
All right. Thom, who would be your
player? The one guy, I agree with my dad 100% on the experience factor with Candelario, and I very much agree in a sophomore jinx. But the one guy to me, and he reminds me mentally of a lot of Joey Votto. And the one thing that Votto had was constant grind, never letting up. And Encarnacion Strand strikes me as that kind of guy. I think that if you just leave him in there, the numbers that he's going to put up at the end of the day, if he is playing regularly 5-6 days a week, I think you're going to look at his numbers and you're going to go, wow. I just think that this kid's got a chance to be a really good, really, really good, solid offensive player for a long, long time.
All right, there you have it. Thom will be on the airwaves this Friday as usual, and he'll be back around the corner there on then Monday, and we'll see what the schedule's lie for next week. But we'll hope and love to have you back next Wednesday.
Yeah, and though, Trace, let's be honest here. As I said to you in a text earlier this morning, this segment really is all about Marty. So it should be set up as like 3 questions for him, 1 for me. He's the guy they want to hear from, and I am completely comfortable in my skin admitting that. We want to see him sort of, go off the reservation a little bit, right? That's sort of his MO, and that's where we are on this show. So you're not hurting my feelings moving forward by having more engagement with Marty than with me.
I think you're embarrassing Marty a little bit here. I think you're embarrassing him.
Embarrassing him.
And listen, let's be fair here. I don't know if there's anybody that is more inclined to do exactly what you just said, maybe getting underneath the skin, poking and prodding, more than anybody that I know than Thom Brenna-Men, which is probably why you might just be a part of this as well. We're going to bring up topics of conversation every so often. Thom, if you want to be the measly mouse there and just hide in the corner and not say anything, that's fine. If you want Marty to take over the show, we all know that he could do that. I'm just saying there's going to be a topic of conversation. I already know over the course of time. At some point, you will poke your little head in there in that little corner that you're sitting up there in, and you're going to start to needle and jab, and you're going to find a way to get peak Marty. You're going to find a way to get peak Marty, and we're going to hang you. As long as you're okay with it, we're going to keep dragging you on this show, and we'll see if we can't get there. But I know Marty's got to run. Marty, thank you for coming on here.
All right,
Thom,
Trace.
hope to see you in the studio here
Good being with you guys.
God bless both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Same here.
All right. There's the Brenna-Mens. We try to do that eloquently in regards to not butchering their name. I do still see people misspell their name from time to time. They put M-E-N. It's not M-E-N. But then I told Casey, I said, well, it's kind of a play on words here. Men's, there's two of them. And Casey was worried that perhaps, we were going to make it look like we misspelled their names, when in reality, we came to the conclusion that if you just hyphenated it, most people would understand. Elliot, you're a person that, you do a good job of getting yourself dunked on a little bit. You take it with take it with heart. I'll tell you what we're going to do.
Nobody does it better
I'll tell you what we're going to do, Elliot.
Sure.
Listen, if I have to drag you, if I have to be a champion and carry you all over this course.
Be a tough drag. Go ahead.
No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. Let's bounce back with some positivity here.
I don't know
Elliot.
if I got any positivity left today.
I think you do. I think you do.
Go ahead.
But point is, I think we could break par. We could break par together. Where it's going to have to be a 2-man scramble. But we're going to go to the toughest courses that Arizona has to offer, the cactuses and all. And we'll see if we can't do that maybe. Maybe that's one of our days that we try to accomplish that.
I'd love to. I'd love to try to break par. But if they're right, if the Brenna-Mens are right, and I'm playing out of the rough every shot, 90%.
Well, you keep saying rough. They said it was a transition. I don't know if you
but
picked up on that. It's not really the rough. It's the desert. It's sand.
I think they knew what they were doing. I think
lies.
I moved one tree one time, and it just gets stuck to me. I'm the guy who moves a tree. Per the PGA, that is in the rules. It did not affect my golf shot, and it was a dead limb. It was not a part of a tree. It was clearly some sort of hurricane-type situation blew that tree towards my ball. Now, I was near the wooded area.
Natural disaster.
Natural disaster.
Jolly says you might have to watch out for the rattlesnakes. That'd be good content. Perhaps where you're sitting there fighting off a rattlesnake, trying to get out of Dodge there.
Could you imagine us recording me getting bit by a rattlesnake in Arizona? How many views we could get on that? That could be the biggest thing we do.
Especially if you're in the hospital almost dead. You got the national media reporting on it. Could you imagine that?
Yeah, I mean that certainly would be fun. We'll try it. We'll try. Listen. You are right. I'm okay being the heel of the joke. I like being the butt of the joke. That's fine. I want to give everybody else the laughter they deserve, because sometimes you go through life and you go through this world and it's sad. You hear all this bad news. You watch the local news, you'll never smile. But and my grandparents watch it every day. Shout out to them. And I don't know how they get up in the morning and have a smile on their face. Which guy got murdered? Which guy got robbed? I don't know. We'll find out at 6:00 tonight on the local news. But I try to give people the joy that they so deserve. And if I have to be the butt of the joke for that, I will do it. I will take that bullet for you.
There's nothing that I fear more than snakes. I don't know when this. I don't know
Indiana
when
Jones.
this. I don't know when this. I want to call it an irrational fear, but I don't think it's irrational. I think it's very rational. I don't know when this started occurring, but there was a movie when I was young that had some weird situation where these kids went into a factory of all things, and they got trapped in there, and there was like 1 billion snakes inside this factory, and they were all just kind of coming after them. Ever since then, been terrified of snakes. I've luckily only seen like maybe a garden snake here or there. Nothing crazy.
If
The other day when I was told, hey,
sure.
just a heads up, while you're out there, oh, by the way, there's massive, what were you guys saying? Like, oh, you better watch out for the tarantulas. And I was like, oh, yeah. And I was like, snakes. It just literally occurred to me that, the MLB professional franchise that plays there is named after a snake. So now I'm having second thoughts. But also, we have good friends in this business, I just want to say.
Okay.
So we're going to we're going to go out there to spring training. We're going to have to buy our tickets or whatever, so we're going to have to figure that out. But that's here nor there. But we have good friends in this business now to where we might actually get to do some NASCAR content.
Whoa.
NASCAR. You've been a little bit on the NASCAR slander.
I have.
A little bit.
No, I don't slander it
No,
anymore.
I wasn't trying to say that you're totally out on it. But I think that if we, responsibly, of course, you wager a little bit of money on a couple cars.
Sure.
And you go out there, I think you're going to be – I've been to a NASCAR race like one time when I was 12, and I still to this day remember it was impressive is the term I would use. It was impressive, Elliot.
I have no doubt about it. That would be great content, too. Let's put Elliott in the middle of the track, and we got guys going 250 miles an hour, and we'll see if Elliott can survive a hit.
I think we
hit
should put
in
you on the
middle
pit
of road.
crew. Could you imagine how pissed they would be?
Oh, that would be tough. I don't know how to change a tire, and I certainly couldn't do it fast if I did know how. So that would be brutal. Now, you mentioned the snakes, and by the way, I'm very excited for NASCAR. I don't slander NASCAR. I don't watch it much because I don't understand the rules. I watched that one NASCAR race, the Daytona, that I bet on, and I still don't fully understand what happened at the end there. But whatever, to each their own. If there's a crash, I guess the laps just get smaller. Anyway, not the point. You mentioned snakes. And we're going to basically Australia. We're going to the Australia of America.
Yeah.
They got all kinds of weird, crazy animals in there. Mm-hmm. And I told you this, and I don't think you fully understood it. Sean and I were trying to tell you, they got big spiders too. I'm deathly afraid of spiders. If any bug is crawling on me in the middle of the night, we're gonna have a serious problem. If you had to pick a choice, a hypothetical, if you were here,
Yeah.
you're laying in a bed in Arizona.
Yes.
You either have one snake on you, crawling on you, that you wake up to,
I'm out.
or you have 3 tarantulas on you.
No, I mean,
Which one you picking?
Is death an option?
Nope, you got to pick one of them. One snake or 3 tarantulas. Either way, you're waking up to one of them on your face. Which one you picking?
I mean,
I
the
think
snake
I'd take
will kill
the
you.
tarantulas.
The snake will actually kill you. Tarantulas.
I think I'll take the tarantulas personally. Yes.
I think you have to pick the tarantulas, but I'll tell you what, it's not going to be a fun time. It's not going to be a fun time.
They got black widows. They got
Well, the good
all
news
sorts
is
of
that
crazy-
I don't mess with those black
you
widows.
didn't make the decisions on where we're staying.
The Scarlett
So
Johanssons.
ultimately, I'm hopeful that where we're staying has some semblance of pest control. I don't know if that's even a thing in Arizona, but I sure hope it is. Maybe I should have inquired about that.
probably
first.
should have.
What kind of pest control companies do you have on site at all times?
Hopefully a lot, because I think that's going to be a problem.
All right, transitioning here
Sure.
into Cincy sports. We're going to talk about all things Cincinnati right after this. That is the local ads at 11. Casey, take it away.
Boo, boo, boo.
All right. The future Bengals report that we're going to do later on in the show is brought to you by Encore Technologies. Encore Technologies provides IT solutions for a data-centered world with a suite of services from mobile computing to desktop to data center, supporting both centralized and work-from-home computing modules to improve efficiency and
PRODUCTIVITY. Productivity.
Yeah, productivity. Visit Encore.tech. The path to innovation begins here. And let me tell you about this lovely bottle of water right here. Pahhni water.
That's
Made
Pahhni
right
water.
here in Hamilton, Ohio. Uses natural limestone filtration, unlike the artificial processing that other brands use. The result is a healthy alkaline water, and some say the best tasting water in the world. Visit Pahhni Water at PAHHNI water.com to see where you can buy this great tasting water. Get your coffee from UDF, switch it down with some Pahhni Water, and get your technology solutions from Encore.tech.
I think we've got a new ad starting next week too. Is that right?
We do have a it hasn't been signed yet, but I mean, listen, it's basically done.
What about my ad? We have another ad too.
We do have another ad.
Two ads.
We do have a couple different ads. Yes, we
That's
do.
starting in
We
2 days here. So yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, in a short period of time, yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes.
How about that?
Well, we can't quite do it yet. However, hopefully this trip provides enough laughs, which I suggest and I think that it will, to get the people to try to jump on.
There's
some of these people that are going to support us.
And there's still some questions regarding that trip. There's been a couple questions in the chat regarding what we're doing.
I think we still have questions about the trip ourselves.
But if we had to explain what's going on here.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to do my best, and if you have anything to add, you
Absolutely.
can feel free to.
I'd love to fill in the holes, Elliot.
Please. I'm not going to make the joke. So here's what's going to happen. On Monday night, there's going to be Trace, there's going to be myself, and there's going to be baseball god Nick Kirby. Outside of that, we're going to have at least one videographer, as they like to be preferred or called in the business. We will go into a chatterbox van that's parked outside our building right now. We will get into a very large van.
That van needs to be moved, by the way. If there's anyone at the office who's watching this right now, if we could avoid a ticket out there, that's on me. I should have moved it.
Is Ticket Boy going to come in the rain, though?
Good point.
Ticket Boy.
If Ticket Boy doesn't got an umbrella, I think we're safe for a little bit.
You never know.
But yeah, so what's going to happen on Monday night, we're going to start our journey to Arizona, Goodyear, Arizona, because it is it's going to be a red spring training trip. That is the objective of our goal here, of our mission. But along the way, we are going to be stopping at various places. Number one, we're going to go to Fog Allen Fieldhouse. We're going to see Kansas take on Kansas State there. I'm very excited. I've never been personally. I know Trace has. I know Casey and Reed, I believe, have as well, and Sean, I think. But I've never done it. That's going to be really cool. Nick Kirby's a big basketball guy. I'm a big basketball guy, so we're going to get our reactions there. Along the way, we're going to be vlogging, which if you don't know what that means, basically we're going to make silly little videos throughout the day, recapping our days, what it's like to be stuck in a van for 100 hours straight. That will be entertaining. We'll do some gas station reviews along the way. And then from there, we're going to Denver. Now, once we get to Denver, I assume we're going to hike and things. Trace made the funny little haha where I'm really going to look forward to hiking. I don't plan on hiking. I want that on the record. I don't plan on hiking. Now, what's going to probably end up happening is that they're going to make me hike, and then they're going to put a camera on me, and they're going to say, "Dance, you monkey, dance." And I'll have to be their little funny boy as I'm struggling to climb this mountain. But that's fine. I'll do it for the content. I'll do it for the people. In Denver, we're going to go to a Nuggets game. I believe they're taking on the Celtics. And we're also going to a Colorado Avalanche game. I don't know who they're playing.
Red Wings?
Red Wings. Detroit Red Wings. So we're going to see sporting events there. Now, from Denver, we are then going to drive straight to Arizona. That is Goodyear, Arizona, where the Reds play spring training games. That will be very fun. We'll get to do all kinds of Reds, Chatterbox Reds content. That is where Nick Kirby will shine the most. And then from there, I believe there's a chance, it's not set in stone yet, but there's a chance we go to Vegas. And we basically recreate the movie The Hangover. Is what I've been told.
Don't forget about the NASCAR event right
and
before
there's a NASCAR event in Phoenix. We're going to do a NASCAR event in Phoenix. We're going to see the Sphere in Vegas. If you don't know what the Sphere is, again, do a little Google search on your little machines. It's very cool. It's very neat. I did see a video on TikTok of what it looks like, that video that we'd see if we went. Mm-hmm. That's pretty badass. We have one of those. An OmniMax, I think is what it's called. It's a lesser extent.
Yeah, I think that's like saying that we're going to Cedar Point, and then somebody's saying, "Well, I mean, we had Stricker's Grove." No disrespect to Stricker's Grove, by the way.
No disrespect.
You drive past that every day?
I do drive past Stricker's Grove every single day.
Yeah.
It's very neat. By the way, I mean, that's one little wooden plank away from just that roller coaster falling down to the earth. But good on anybody who still tries to ride it.
That's one hell of a coaster.
That's right. Outside of that should be it. Then we round out our trip. I believe, now this is the exciting part. I won't even spoil it. I won't even spoil the next part. But basically, we're going to get on our way back, and that will be misery. But yeah, that's basically
we have basically content every single day. The goal is to entertain people. In regards to what's going to happen with this show, Reed Mouse, Casey McAllister are going to try to hold the fort down. They probably will check in to us from time to time to see where we're at.
I believe every day. Every day.
That's the goal. I don't know if we've done super chats here. I'm going to read through these super chats if we've not done that yet already. I know you were kind of putting them up there on the screen as we went. I'll start with Chi-Town Real Estate. Chi-Town, good marketing effort by him. He says, thank you so much for the support in my social medias. Here's some support back your way. Chatterbox Realtor, LLC. All right, Chi-Town. If I ever need real estate in Chicago, I know where to go. I know where to go.
He also he asked me
Mark Fetters has been a member for 5 months.
Oh.
Saying Justin Fields is greater than Caleb Williams. And Justin also adds, are the ads of Extents featuring Drake? And the answer is no. No, they're not. All right, Cincy Sports. That's why people usually watch this show. They want to talk about the local landscape that is sports around the city. Last night, the Houston Cougars, #1 in the country, for the most part, handled the Bearcats relatively handedly. There was never a situation in that game where you felt like the Bearcats were probably going to win. There were times where you thought they might have a chance to win, but at no point did you ever think they were going to win. Victor Locken kind of got some more run last night, Elliot.
He sure did.
It certainly seemed as if they were trying to get him back in the mold a little bit, like trying to get some confidence back. And he started to kind of get a little bit of his groove back somewhat. I don't want to suggest for any stretch of the imagination that he looked good. But at the end of it all, does it really matter? Because they're just not a great team. They're not a great team. And you keep convincing me that we should talk about them, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't talk about them.
Well, you have to talk about them.
Do we have to talk about them?
Because this is the Cincinnati sports show, and if you don't talk about the sports that are in your city, what are we even doing?
Well, then that would bring up the opportunity of let's talk about the Cyclones.
Casey, you got any Cyclones?
FC Cincinnati?
Let me get the Cyclones
FC Cincinnati?
FC Cincinnati actually play today, and the CONCACAF.
CONCACAF.
When do they play?
They when do they play?
Yeah.
I have it pulled up right here. They play at 7 o'clock. They are facing the Cavaliers again.
Nice.
Rematch.
Yep, it's the second leg of their match.
Right off the back of the buzzer beater.
So this is a aggregate thing?
Yep.
Okay.
And they're up by 2, so
I actually like aggregate. If you're going to go the aggregate route, I honestly don't hate it. I think that's actually fun. But anyway, so tune into that at 7 o'clock tonight against the Cleveland Cavaliers.
And it's here in Cincinnati. So
really?
Yeah, that's what it says here. It's in TQL. So
are you going to go to the game?
I don't know.
It's against the Cleveland Cavs. Why wouldn't you go?
Get to see Donovan Mitchell.
Mouse Cop says it's not hard to say CONCACAF.
CONCACAF. Are we happy?
That's the biggest soccer. Look at his hat. That's the biggest soccer fan we know. Back to the Bearcats. Yeah, I know nobody wants to talk about them. I certainly don't want to talk about them, but you have to talk about them.
You know, I don't think you have to, but go ahead. Let's hear your thoughts on the game last night, then, Elliot.
It was horrible. At some point, somebody, and I've got some audio from Wes Miller. At some point, when you get into a rhythm offensively, there has to be some sort of motion anywhere. All they do is stand around, and they do nothing. They do nothing. There's no movement offensively. All it is either a failed lob to Aziz, or it's a three that they chuck up and they brick. And I've never seen a group of basketball players that brick three-point shots more consistently, as efficiently as they do.
This is like Groundhog Day.
It is. It is like Groundhog Day.
I come in here and I say, you know what do we want to talk about? And Elliot goes, we got to talk about the Bearcats. I'm like, we do?
We do.
What are we going to say? They're going to say the same thing over and over again. Wes Miller's pissed. They can't make shots.
Miller is pissed.
Their offense is terrible. They do play pretty scrappy defense. They try hard, so everybody's excited the fact that they got a good culture. They try hard, but they don't have good players. They're not a very good basketball team. It's literally as simple as that. I'm not trying to kill them, but Wes Miller's program, state of his program right now, is not in a place that's even relatively entertaining on February 28th. And I understand that it's college basketball season, but the two programs in this city that people mostly care about are dead. Dead. D-E-A, dead. Done. D-U-N. All of them. They're not good. They're not good.
No.
We could have some relatively and somewhat insightful and fun conversations about college basketball if we'd like. Does Reed Shepherd, should he earn more playing time? When it's about the Cats, the Wildcats of Kentucky. But again, I don't know how many people really – most people that are casual sports fans, please correct me if I'm wrong. Most people, and I even find myself starting to kind of fall into this trap, is that it really all comes down to the conference tournament and what you do in March. What do you do in March Madness? No better example of that than Mick Cronin when he was here. Mick Cronin was a great coach when he was here. They had good teams. They won basketball games. But time and time again, they fell short when it came to the time in March Madness. And here we are again with the Bearcats in a situation where they've continued to let their fan base down. I'm not out on Wes Miller. We can play his clip. That's all good and well. But I'm sure that this clip that you're getting ready to show me is a damn near, if not the same, as the first 5 clips that we've ran.
Sure.
I'll tell you what, let's have fun. It's almost like a new player next to him every single time. That's the only way that you know it's different. The only way you know it's different is because there's a new player next to him every single time.
You have to have every player agree with him that you're pissed.
Gotcha. That's what it is.
That's what I take away most from these press conferences, that he's so pissed.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to play a clip from Wes Miller, and then we're going to talk about how the same things that have basically happened all year long are continuing to happen. And then we'll talk about maybe some other news like the Bengals or, I don't know, maybe the Cyclones. Here's Wes Miller.
Considering the way the game started, are you pleased with, I mean, you're not pleased with the way it ended, but the surge at the end to get it that close?
I think, Scott, the thing that I've been extremely proud of this year is that we've had a resilience and a fight about us. It feels like every night.
I try hard.
Regardless of, whatever circumstance has been put in front of us, and we've had quite a few of them, whether it's just getting down in the game or, losing a guy or not having a guy eligible, like we've just kind of kept fighting all year.
Those are all things that you see coming.
We didn't do that last week against Oklahoma State and certainly against TCU, and that was really discouraging. So it was great. Not great.
The
it was
winnable
expected
games they
for
didn't
us
try.
to get back that tonight. I'm
Games
proud
that
of
they probably
that.
can't
I've been proud
win.
of it all
They
year.
try.
And our guys had that tonight. Just didn't play well enough to get those 2 or 3 possessions better that you gotta have to beat a team like this.
Coach.
Gotcha. All right. Well, so there you have it. That's Wes Miller. And listen, I believe Wes Miller's going to get the job done. I really do. But when we walk in here, it's like I just don't see it. I don't see what there is to talk about with this UC basketball team, because at the end of it all, something's going to have to change, and it's going to come in the form of better players.
I think
you have to have better players. People point to me and say, Dan Skillings, he's going to be a star. Is he really? Is he really? Are we sure about that? The only somewhat star that I see on this basketball team that I would be willing to bet my hard-earned money on is Jizzle James. Outside of Jizzle James, I'm not convinced that any of those guys are going to ultimately end up helping you win a championship of some kind.
But here's the thing about Jizzle, and this is where I wanted to have this conversation, because as much as we say that we need better guys, and that's fine and dandy, I'd like to see some of these guys improve a little bit. Dan Skillings can't stay on his feet. Dan Skillings is not good enough offensively to carry the offense. Jizzle James had 4 turnovers in 20 minutes yesterday. He was 3 for 9 from the floor. He wasn't good. Not to mention he's respectfully not very good defensively. Terrible. Bad on defense. You got a guy like John Newman who's been dealing with an injury ever since that West Virginia hit.
He's a 6-year player.
But I'm saying, I'm just saying, we have guys that have gone who have been, they were good for at least the first half of the year, and now it's not even like we're getting anything from them. John Newman, we've gotten nothing from him in the past 4 or so games, especially on the offensive side of the basketball. Jizzle James, again, we can all sit here and say that he's the future, he's the star, he can be this and that. He hasn't done a ton in the minutes that he's been given. He hasn't. There's been a couple games where he has. I look around this roster, and you're right. I mean, you can't say the same thing after every single game, even though we do. But at some point, I'd like to see a little bit of progression in this offense, and there's none. We've gotten worse offensively. There's no rhythm. There's none. And I don't understand why.
You have 0 good offensive players. Literally none.
Yeah,
0. Except for Jizzle James. They can create his own shot from time to time, but they don't really run what I would call a fluid offense. There's not an offensive identity.
No,
they can't throw the ball inside. They can't score. They do guard well. I give them that. They do rebound the ball. They are physical. They do compete. But it's almost like this weird notion that's happened to UC basketball over the course of the last few years, and certainly Mick Cronin was a kind of a part of the foundation of this, and I'm not suggesting that Wes Miller is going to fall completely in this line. But when Wes Miller came over, when Mick left, there were some folks that might have thought that there was this breath of fresh air coming in to where, oh, man, we might actually score like 80, 90 points a game. You know, like, oh, we might try to change our identity a little bit. Everybody can make fun of Xavier all you want. But Xavier's brand of basketball is significantly more entertaining the last 2 years than anything that I've seen under UC basketball in quite some time. And I'm not saying that one is significantly better than the other, but from just an entertainment value, like enjoyable to watch, it's a rock fight watching UC basketball more times than not because they don't have anybody that can score the ball. And in the times that they've had players that can score the ball, it's turned into where you rely on them almost significantly or entirely for point production. And you can run through the list of names that we all know who are excellent scorers. Cumberland was one of them. I'm sure you're a better fan than I. You can run through the list of names.
Yep,
but
Gary
my point
Clark.
is that if it wasn't for those guys, those teams were scoring 50 points a night every time. So, like, at what point does UC, and I don't know if it's soon, I don't know, I mean, there's some culture thing. I keep hearing it's Cincinnati basketball. What's Cincinnati basketball? Not being in the Sweet 16 one time in the last 25 years? A rock fight? Scoring 45, 50 points a night? That's Cincinnati basketball? Because if that's Cincinnati basketball, that's not the type of style of basketball I would want if I was a fan. That's all I'm saying.
No, and that's fair. That's a 100% fair point. I'm not on the Fire West wagon, but I'd like to see some sort of progress down the stretch here. And if we're unable to get that, I have significant concerns heading into next season. And maybe it'll all resolve itself. But that's it. You lose 67-59 to the number one team in the country. And even though it was an 8-point game, it looked like at no point in that game were they in it. They cut it to like 13. You're like, okay, maybe. And it's just bad. 20 turnovers. Who's responsible for that? I can't believe that this team is so undisciplined where you turn it over 20 times a game. At some point, you have to blame the coach a little bit. And you made that point with Marty and Thom. At some point, it's on the coach. So I don't know who you want me to blame. Who do you want me to blame, Wes? Do you want me to blame any of your players? Do you want me to blame you? Somebody has to take the blame for 20 turnovers. Now, I'll give them this. Ever since we called out the free throws, they've been very good at that. So shout out to, what were they, 12 for 15 last night? Free throws have improved. Why do we turn the ball over every single possession? It's impossible. It's impossible. But I guess that's where we are in Cincinnati. That's the last note I have. Bearcats lose, and the season's done.
Yeah, and listen, there's people in the chat saying, I see Steve saying Houston's pretty much a rock fight type of team, and they've been pretty good. Yes, they have. Yes, they have. They also, again, they have a proven head coach that has won at pretty much everywhere he's gone. The question is like, at some point, what is Wes's identity? Because when he came over, I thought his identity was more or less that they were going to score the ball. That's what Wes Miller was basically
That's what I thought.
Preached, was that we're going to get up and down and we're going to run and we're going to score. And that's not what they have. And I think maybe you could just say that they've missed on some guys. They've recruited some guys and they've missed on them. And they have not had a chance to go out for a multitude of years here to recruit at a level in which they need. We've talked about this every day. It's Groundhog's Day. It's Groundhog's Day.
It is Groundhog's Day.
It's UC basketball. It's the same thing over and over again. What changes? I don't know. They need to go out and get some guys in the portal for sure that are going to be impact players. Xavier, the team right across town here, has done it twice. They went out and they got Sule Boom, who was an impact scorer, and they have Olivari. They've done it twice. Can UC do that? And the things that he's complaining about at the beginning of the clip there, we've had a lot of adversity. Okay, yeah, what? You went out and got C.J. Frederick. Nothing against that kid, but he's been hurt his whole career. So you can't sit there and cry wolf that the kid's been hurt this year. That's part of what you brought in. Then you had two kids that came over that you knew were going to have eligibility concerns, possibly. Now, you might have thought it was going to be a cakewalk. Turns out it wasn't. But you knew that going in.
Yep.
You can't start your press conference and complain about the two things that you knew when you started the season off. All right. By the way, they got the eligibility of the kids in what I would consider plenty of time, by the way.
100%.
I mean, it's not like those kids sat out like
No, they got
a significant amount of time.
They got him before conference play.
Yeah. So I mean, at some point, the excuses are basically just we need to be a better team, which might require better players and maybe a better scheme. I don't know. We can argue tooth and nail of which one they need to do. All right. We have some Bengals news here today.
Ooh.
We have a situation at the Combine now where there's quotes that are coming out. Casey, you're obviously the resident Bengals expert here. How much do you take these quotes to heart? Do you think that this is lip service over there, or do you think they actually mean what they say?
I mean, I think there's some truth to it. There's a lot of fluff, but I do think that there is some hidden meanings in between what they're saying. You can take back from last year how they were talking about T. Higgins to this year. It's kind of changed their approach to T. Last year it was go get your own receiver. We're not trading him. Now it's we're leaving the doors for any possibilities. So they've definitely are, like I said before, they're not shutting the doors on anything. They're gonna listen to people. I think last year they thought it was a bit of a joke to start trading T. Higgins at this point, or at that point in his career with the Bengals. But now at this point where they have the franchise tag on him, it makes more sense to do so. I've compiled a list of quotes, different topics from Bengals Nation that are spanning from Joe Burrow's injury, Myles Murphy, Cordell Volson, the running backs room, T.J. Reader, T. Higgins, and we also have just now started today getting info on players that they are interviewing for the Bengals draft this season. So if you don't mind, I'm going to just list through them really quickly, kind of rapid fire these, and kind of just do a quick little roundup on what's been said so far at the Combine. Updates for Joe Burrow's wrist. We're going to start there. He's Joe. So you know that he's 100% focused on all of that getting healthy. All reports that we've gotten from him have been very positive. We expect a full recovery for him to continue being Joe. Last report that was official was training camp. So I expect him to be back by training camp.
Who said that?
That was Duke Tobin.
All right.
That quote from Duke Tobin on Joe Burrow's wrist. Duke Tobin also had this to say about Myles Murphy. He has grown a lot since he has been with us. He's starting to feel what the NFL is all about and the speed of the game. I was really excited about his progression the second half of the season. When you're playing in the trenches in the NFL, it's a transition. And there's some other quotes I didn't have written down here, but he's talked to some of the players at Clemson, Myles Murphy, and the sentiment from those guys, from Murphy, is that it is a huge game-changing speed difference when you go into the NFL. So, yeah, I think we all agree that he played a lot better in the second half of the season. They also asked about Cordell Volson. Duke Tobin had this to say. He's still young. He's still very young, and praised his attitude, toughness, size, thinks he's a good run blocker, think he still has a lot of upside. We've seen a lot of good out of Cordell. I don't think any of us have seen the best yet. The second half of Cordell Volson's season last year, he only allowed 2 sacks and a pass block efficiency of 97.2, tied for second best in the NFL after the bye week this year. So basically the thought is when Joe Burrow isn't a sitting duck and you can move around in the pocket, Volson is one of the best guards in the NFL based off of the analytics and numbers. So Zach Taylor had this to say about the running backs. There are certain things that you're looking for in a running back room. Doesn't have to come from one player at all. Might be a little insight into Joe Mixon. Duke Tobin had this to say about DJ Reader. He's in the building every day rehabbing. We think he's going to get through it and be just fine. We're talking to him like a lot of our unrestricted free agents and seeing if there's an opportunity to keep him here. And then I have this, the most important bit, Duke Tobin on T. Higgins, and then I'll get into some of the guys that they've interviewed in the draft so far.
Yeah, you know, we got the salary cap numbers, and we knew kind of where we were heading with it. As soon as we got the salary cap numbers, there's no point in lingering on this, and we made the decision. We just went with it. So there wasn't any more thought to it other than this is what we're going to do. Why don't we just go ahead and do it?
What are your thoughts on how complicated is the process of actually pulling off a tag and trade? It's rare. You don't see it very often. Is it a complicated process?
Well, I don't know. I've never done one. Yeah. So, again, we tagged him with the intent of him playing for us.
Right.
He's a good player. We want good players. He fits us perfectly. So we tagged him for that reason. Mm-hmm. I'm not the hypotheticals of what could happen. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to comment on.
Is it that simple? When you do make the decision to apply the tag, do you want him on the roster in 24 or not? Is it that black and white? You don't go into it saying, "Oh, well, we could."
We want him on the roster. Yeah, we want him on the roster.
What are the challenges of paying 2 wide receivers at a high-end salary? Jamar is going to be eligible soon. T's already. What are the challenges like in terms of cap construction and what that looks like?
It's challenging. You can only have so many super high-priced guys on your team, and so yes, it's a challenge. We try to work within the rules that are there for us. We didn't. The CBA is the CBA. It was negotiated. Our job is to work within it to try to have the best team possible year over year. And our thoughts are that this is a way to have the best team possible next year. We'll work through the challenges that come with that as we go.
There's a lot of discussions that wide receiver, that as more receivers come into the league, that maybe there's an offset cost for younger players like we see the running back market. Do you ever see that potentially being the case for receivers?
There are a lot of receivers in the draft every year. The college game just lends itself to a lot of guys, and there's a lot of different style guys. And so there will always be guys coming in. You got to make the right choices when you do it. It is a position that we feel pretty strongly that we can identify with our situation and our quarterback. But when you have a bird in the hand, you like to continue with them if you think that they're going to continue to produce for you.
Yeah, and that was Duke Tobin on T. Higgins and the situation there. And the other thing, too, this draft, it is stacked with receivers, and not just any receivers like slots or, your X or Ys or whatever. It's guys that are T. Higgins size. They're 6'4", big-bodied, jump ball guys. So keep your eyes on that, see if they potentially make a trade. Last thing I'll say before we wrap up this little recap segment of the Combine, the Bengals have met with a ton of players, and it looks like they're focusing on edge rusher specifically. Out of the guys that have been confirmed in the first couple hours of today's meetings, we have 6 are edge rushers. 6. Chop Robinson from Penn State, first rounder. Jared Verse, FSU, edge rusher, first round. Nelson Caesar, Houston, edge rusher, probably in your day 2 picks. Gabriel Murphy, UCLA, edge rusher, probably a day 2 guy. Jalen Harrell, Michigan, another day 2 guy, edge rusher. Mohamed Kamara, Colorado State, another day 2 guy. I mean, they looked at the numbers last year, said they only got 26.5 sacks out of the rest of the group besides Trey Hendrickson. They think are probably trying to upgrade that position significantly because it is an area of need, an area that we've struggled in. But it's also a little weird because of what they had to say about Miles Murphy. I don't know. And
somebody's lying.
Yeah, like there's something.
Well, there's something not adding up.
Yeah, something's not right. But that's the recap of the Combine. Any thoughts from any of the quotes, any of the names I listed?
Before we do that, Casey, before we get into that, I sent you one DM, and this was the NFL Players Association surveys of each organization.
Bengals, you put a lot of stock in this?
I put a little bit of stock in it. I think it matters how your players feel about where they go to work every single day.
I'm pulling up a different one that has actual. I'm pulling it up. I'm pulling a different one up.
I think it matters. I think it matters how your players feel about where you go to work. Obviously, the Dolphins, Miami, nice stadium, that ranks number 1. It pretty much where you want to work in the NFL. Now, what do these really mean? Like Trace just said, I don't know. But obviously, you want your team to be happy. And dead last was, I believe, the Washington Commanders. They are in dead last. But this is the Players Association here grading the Bengals. So they get an F- in treatment of families.
Yeah, 32nd out of,
That's
for
tough.
those that don't know, 32.
They get an F- in food cafeteria. That's 32nd. I believe they're one of the only teams to not provide 3 meals a day to the team. They do it only on one day, which is Wednesdays. It's the only day that the team gets 3 meals. Nutritionist, dietitian, F- last. Locker room, D+, 24th. Training room, B. Good training room. Training staff, B. Good job. Weight room, B. Good work. Strength coaches, A. C for the team travel, A for the head coach, C+ for the, I don't know what that says at the bottom.
Ownership,
which is fair, which is probably more than fair.
Here's some of the things that were said about each of those F minuses.
Yeah.
They are one of 4 teams that offer neither a family room nor a daycare for players' families on game day.
Tough.
That's tough. They're the only team that closes their cafeteria on the players' days off, even though many of the players come to the facility on off days for extra preparation and recovery. The club did begin to provide 3 meals a day on Wednesdays only this year, but they are one of 2 teams in the league that don't provide 3 meals a day each day for their players. That's kind of crazy. Now, the Bengals did announce that they were making significant upgrades to the facilities. Like they just announced that they were going to be remodeling the locker room. They were going to be upgrading the field with the turf, and that there's a litany of other upgrades to come. But this is actually like their second year in a row where the family preparation or the family treatment was at an F. The cafeteria being at an F. The dietitians being at an F. That's kind of unacceptable that they've been that way at the bottom 2 years in a row.
Yeah, it's pretty basic stuff you'd want your franchise to be good at. And this has been, I think, a problem for the Cincinnati Bengals, I believe, for a long period of time in terms of the meals, the drinks. I believe they didn't have water for the players when Carson Palmer was here. I think that was one of his big beefs with the Cincinnati Bengals. But this is stuff that needs to be fixed. I mean, I don't know what the hell's going on there, not giving your guys 3 meals a day. How hard is it? How hard is it to cook up a grilled chicken breast?
I don't know. Some people are saying that builds character. I think that's an angle. That's one angle of attack. You're building some character. You want your players to kind of be a little grimy.
I want my players to be beefed up though. I want them to be stuffed with protein. What are we doing?
Stuff them.
Stuff them up.
Yeah.
Give 'em that
Jolly
3 meals a
mentions,
day.
Jolly has a good note. If you don't know our friend Jake Jolivet, always good to remember that every team will get about $321 million each season with the new media deal. So nothing like penny pinching when you're making $321 million in the new media deal. That's fun.
You know,
Great
I
place
was
to work,
thinking the
though.
last time I was at Paul Brown Stadium, how like there has to be at some point just a little more effort on trying to. And I know it doesn't get you anywhere. I know it doesn't really mean a whole lot. People are still going to come to the games. There's no doubt in my mind that the NFL, it doesn't matter if they have signage on the walls or not. But there's no real there's nothing at that stadium that makes you be like, wow, this is kind of neat, or this is a nice fan engagement area. It's literally just concrete. By the way, not only is it concrete and cinder blocks, but there's not even like fun, nice acrylic signs everywhere with it. Like how much does that cost us? I mean, let's be honest. If we got an interior designer or a designer in general, we had to buy some acrylic signs. What's it? Maybe $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million max. And I get it. It's easy to spend $1.5 million, $2 million when it's not your million or $2 million.
That's right.
However, when you're getting $300 million, it seems like something that you would do.
They're behind the times. I think Paycor Stadium is one of the very worst in all of sports in America.
Just some signs. Hell, just Bengal stripes down the wall. Anything.
They could easily get some guy to do murals on the blank walls. Easily. Like, just make it all like some sort of like art project for people to come in. I bet you that they would do it relatively cheap. But I don't know.
Again, I'm not a billionaire owner, but these are things, little baby things that should be fixed immediately. Like, it's not even a second thought, and they don't take a long time to fix. You just do it, and that's what it is.
When the biggest character about the stadium is that the seats are green because it's a jungle.
Because it's a jungle. Yeah,
and they're not even really green anymore. They're like faded, like almost like a turquoise at this point.
Yeah, Reed told me that. I couldn't even believe it. The seats are green because it's a jungle. And that's what they want you to know. But yeah, listen, Paycor is one of the very worst stadiums in this country. I think they've done a better job since obviously getting Joe Burrow. But to take it into the year 2024 before we start making some serious renovations or serious changes to this arena is a disgrace.
I don't think they have to do a whole lot.
I'm not saying they have to do a whole lot.
Who cares? Just let's get some acrylic signs. Maybe we could mix in like and again, I know it might take a little bit of effort down there, and maybe that's too much to ask. But just maybe even an area to where you kind of got some statues or something, and you just something. I mean, just a little bit of help. A little bit of help would be nice. T. Higgins situation, and I know we've talked about this pretty much every single day. So if you've watched Off the Bench the last month, you've really seen the same show 3 or 4 times. But I do think it's interesting. I was thinking last night, like, T. Higgins is – it's just like – it feels like you're going down the same path as they've gone down time and time before. The latest example obviously being Jesse Bates, to where this guy's going to walk, isn't he?
Yeah.
This guy is going to walk. You're going to get nothing in return for him, and you're going to that's where I don't understand the plan. I don't understand the plan, because if you're just going to let him walk, then okay. Then is the plan to try to go proverbial like all in and make sure you can get as many talented players as possible in here this next year while you have him, and go for it all? Because if that's the case, okay, that's a plan. We can all argue or disagree whether or not that's the right plan, but at least it is a plan. You can't say that's not a semblance of a concept. I keep sitting here thinking to myself, okay, they have unbelievable flexibility with the cap. The cap is not a problem at all. It's not even a thought of being a problem.
Nope.
Yet we sit here and we're okay with just letting this guy walk out the door and getting nothing in return. But at the same time, there's still time, but there doesn't seem to be a semblance of, I don't want to say hurry, but everything's just kind of like, this is our plan moving forward. We want to try to find best value, blah, 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 blah. And again, what is the plan? Because if the salary cap keeps going up, we can all agree, even giving Jesse Bates $30 million might not end up it doesn't look like it's the world's worst contract.
Right. I mean, this year specifically, if you were to have given Jesse Bates last year the contract that he did receive from Atlanta, getting $16 million for like a top 3 safety is a steal. And it just is. I mean, the only reason they don't keep these guys is because they won't guarantee anything past the first year. The rumor is, or from what I've seen on X.com,
nice,
is that T. Higgins and his agent David Mulligetta are trying to do a record-breaking guaranteed deal, which would be probably north of like that $75 million guaranteed, which is more than 2 years. It's like 3 years, maybe even 4 years guaranteed, and that's just something the Bengals are just not gonna do. They're not interested in guaranteeing things way out into the future like that, unless it's your franchise quarterback.
And if that's the case, then why not? If that's the case with Jesse Bates, and that's the case with T. Higgins, and that's the case with all of these guys, then it feels as if they're going to have to change their motto of trading guys.
It does. I mean, that's
like you can't play the game of not guaranteeing contracts and keeping these guys that you drafted, you developed. You have the right to be able to offer them first a contract. You get the first crack at it. And if you're not going to do the guaranteed contract thing, and some of these teams in the league are, then you have to be on the side of the aisle of thinking to yourself, while we do draft these guys, if we do hit on these draft picks, we have to cash in at the end of this if we're going to just let them walk.
Yeah. To me, you know what it's really similar to It's all the MLB teams that are low market teams, that are small market.
Yeah.
It's very similar to, and they're playing a game where they don't have to do that. That's the thing, is like they don't have to play this way, but they choose to, and they don't even really follow through with it. They kind of do what we said before over and over again. They're kind of like just sitting in between. They're trying to appease both sides, and they need to just go all in on one side or the other. They just have to. They have to either adapt to the times and start signing these guys long term, or they need to start trading and start being more aggressive and trying to find deals that will help them going forward.
I think that's a fair point that Trace made earlier. The Bengals have never seemed, at least to me, to be an organization that stresses urgency on some of these things. I think, and again, you can point to the contract of Joe Burrow. You can point to Orlando Brown, and certainly as of late, it's been a completely different organization. Everybody knows that. Everybody around football, everybody in the media, every fan in the world knows that once Blackburn and everybody took over here, it's been a vastly better run organization. But there's still the same narratives that the Bengals will bangle, and that is that, you know, at the trade deadline, you're not going to make any significant trades. You're not going to make any moves. The drafting, I don't think the Bengals have been great at drafting guys, specifically late in the draft, as Casey pointed out earlier in this week. And I don't know what's the plan is for paying some of these guys, because at the end of the day, it's still Mike Brown, it's still that family up there. And will they be able to pay two receivers? And the answer is probably, most likely, definitely no. And if that's the case, that's fine. You play with T. Higgins this year. You take everything you got out of him. But I would say that doesn't mean you can't go out and try to draft a wide receiver to help next season, right? I mean, I just think that there's options here, and I don't know if the Bengals are picking the right.
But
one.
You are paying T. Higgins. That's the thing.
You're paying him 100%.
You're
paying him what, 21?
You're tagging this guy. He's making what, $20+ million? $21 million. So you're guaranteeing him $21 million this year.
Do you think?
I guess we just don't know. We don't know what T. Higgins is asking. That's the part of this that's very difficult to sit here and be critical of the Bengals, because if you don't know what he's asking for, then it's tough.
How much more than $21 million would he be asking, do you think? If and by the way, what number would be the cutoff point? Because we know the cap's going up. So would 27 not be enough? Would 27 be too much? Is 27 mil too much?
Yeah.
26 mil too much?
So it's not about the actual money that they're giving out. It's about what they're guaranteeing past the first year. I think they've got that figured out. They got that 22, 21 per year figured out. Now that's just what we tell people. It's like 21 per year. But the first year, if you were to sign T. Higgins the first year, the cap hit probably would be like $14 million.
Yeah.
You'd have even more cap space to play with if they were just to sign a deal with him. The problem is the Bengals it's too much of a risk for them, apparently. I don't understand why that's the case. But
I think it's because, I think you brought it up this week or earlier on, maybe it was late last week, that T. Higgins has been a little bit injury prone. And you brought up the point that though he can start, he started 14 games at least every single season. Some of those games he exits early. He plays one drive and he's gone. I don't know how many of those games have happened, but it seems like there's been a nagging injury to T. Higgins at least every season for the past couple of years now. I could be wrong on that, but that's what it seems like to me. And do you want to pay guaranteed money? And this is where, ironically, it all comes back to Trace's point. What was it, last week when all the drama happened? That guaranteed contracts for guys who get hurt a lot, it's a tough deal. You have to be out there. The best ability
is availability.
And if you're not going to be available every single game, I have a hard time guaranteeing you all this money.
The one thing, too, that I keep seeing in the comment section is that, especially, I'm looking at you, Reed, letting T walk after the year makes more sense than signing T for $100 million. I don't think that's the case anymore.
No, it's not.
It's not.
That's where we've. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of baseball contracts here soon. It's like, oh my God, you signed Joey Votto to a $100 million contract. It's $20 million. Well, $20 million is an average player. It's an average player on the back end of his career.
100%.
And T. Higgins' deal, if you give him $100 million, I got news for you. Here in about 2 or 3 years, wait until Marvin Harrison asks what he wants in his second contract. See what that looks like. Then you
Right.
come back and tell me what you think it looks like. It comes down to you believe that he's a number one, and do you want him to be a part of the future? The money part of this right now, the NFL is not going anywhere. If Major League Baseball is giving out $1 billion contracts, billion with a B, to players that just got Tommy John, do we think for a second that economically in the NFL things are going to change anytime soon? The NFL is clearly the most dominant, most watched, most enjoyed sport in our country, and it's not even remotely close. And on top of that, they're trying to make this a global game. We'll see ultimately where that ends up going. The salary cap is not an issue. It's not been an issue. Yet we sit here and we get concerned about signing guys to bigger contracts, and I put that in quotations, and it all comes down to they're not confident. Clearly, it comes down to they're not confident of T. Higgins' ability to be a good player moving forward. That's all it comes down to me. Because if T. Higgins is somewhat similar or has a semblance of the type of performances he's had in years past, he's going to be worth $100 million. He just is. And you can structure it however you want from a salary cap perspective. If you want to give him a big signing bonus on the front end, and then therefore you can kind of delve out that salary cap to try to help yourself out, go for it. That's fine. But if you, again, it's like if you're going to bet on the fact that you don't think they're going to be worthwhile, that's fine. But if you swing and miss on that, then guess what? You better be excellent in the draft. And yet here we sit with the Bengals right after they just win the AFC Championship. Fast forward not that long after, and we're looking back and we're saying to ourselves, man, I sure wish we would have just guaranteed the money to Jesse Bates because he's worth it. In 2 years, are you going to be like, damn, man, I'm sitting around here and I'm watching Jamar Chase and he's got Yoshi Ishivas and he's got two other guys that we think are scrubs, and I'm not suggesting that Yoshi's going to be a scrub. But my point is that it'd be sure nice if we just gave T. Higgins $100 million. Now, again, if T. Higgins gets hurt and he ends up not being the player that he was, everybody's going to jump for joy and say, look, see, that's why you shouldn't have signed him. But that's what this ultimately comes down to. I don't think the money part of this is really that big of a hang-up. Because you already decided 1 year. You're already burning 1 year of the opportunity of utilizing that to your salary cap advantage and paying T. If you didn't tag him, you could have agreed and said, okay, if we're going to give him $21 million this year, that's already money we're planning on spending anyways. So that's 1 year of the deal. How many more years do I need to guarantee it before we get a deal done? And it just seems like the Bengals, time and time again, want to play hardball. They want to be the guy. They want to be the smartest guy in the room sometimes. I don't know. And T. Higgins is a great player. I just get concerned when everybody's like, well, we'll just go draft another receiver. All right. I mean, that's not a guarantee.
Yeah, I mean,
I've referenced the Packers, and again, I get it, but like they spent a first-round pick on a guy that, quite honestly, you probably wouldn't even get a second or third rounder on if you traded him now. And Watkins, but he's not been available. I get it, but I don't know. It just seems like everybody always jumps for the money thing. Like, oh, you can't guarantee a wide receiver that much money. Is that much money anymore? Because it doesn't seem like that much money anymore. In 2 years, are we going to think $100 million contract's that big of a deal?
No.
Look back at a perfect example, and I'll shut up and let you talk here. A perfect example is Mahomes. Do you remember when Mahomes signed that contract? Everybody was like, this is crazy. This is crazy. The Chiefs are going to be screwed from the salary cap perspective on the back end of his career. And now everybody laughs at that. Like, that's almost like literally, it's a laughable thing to think that Patrick Mahomes' contract's a bad contract, which I get. He's ended up being maybe the best player of all time. Blah, blah, blah. He can't do no wrong. God's gift to earth. But that's my point.
No, I agree with you. I think the salary cap going up like it has been, it's almost been going up exponentially, guys. Like 10 years ago, it was at 120. 10 years ago, it was at 125. Now we're at 255. It's almost doubled. I mean, I hate to say it, but it feels like they don't have a good grasp on where the NFL market is truly going. And I just feel like it just keeps growing ever more. And I understand Reed's point that you could probably get a good first-round receiver it's a lot like the running back position. I agree with you on that, but the Bengals already laid their bed. They already gave him a franchise tag. That was one, to me, worst case scenario. If you didn't give him a contract, you either franchise tag him and trade him. That's the other option, because you already, like you said, guaranteed 1 year of what the contract would have been.
Yeah.
So, like, what's the point? And if you're going to threaten to franchise tag him again the next year, what was that for? Because then there's your 2 years guaranteed, and then are we really going to fight over the third year? If you're wanting to keep him that long, then you should have just signed him to the initial deal, and the market's going up while that is all happening. So to me, I'm also going off of the assumption, too, that the Bengals will not trade T. They're franchising him, and they're going to make the same mistake that they did with Jesse Bates and not get any value from him. We know this Bengals organization. They're not going to trade T. Higgins unless it's something ridiculous, like 2 first-rounders or a first and a second. I don't know why we think that this is a bad move on the Bengals' part, especially when the first year of this contract year for T would have probably been like $12-14 million. I don't know.
Orlando Brown, can you restructure his contract? You're going to save some money there. That has to happen, right?
That's another $4 or $5 million. Yep.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, if you're wanting to cut Mixon, which I don't think is the right move, but I mean, you could get another $2 million if you're going to go out and sign a vet. You know, there's other ways to make money or to get more money, especially like Sam Hubbard. If they are truly looking at edge rusher again, and they already have an answer there and Miles Murphy to replace Hubbard, like, you could theoretically restructure that or cut him, which I wouldn't cut him. I think he's a bigger part to this team locker room wise than that. Same with Joe.
How close do you think the Bengals like that? That's the question that I have. Like
if they were truly,
how close are the Bengals? Because it feels like they're in a situation where they were very, very poor defensively last year. What changes on that side of the ball that makes me believe that they're going to be able to be competitive enough to be a part of the Super Bowl conversations? Like, I think there's this mirage a little bit, the fact that Joe Burrow was hurt, and that's more than a valid point. But he doesn't play defense. So what exactly gets shored up on that side of the ball that changes things, if anything? Like, I guess that's the question I have. Was the defense just like a fluke, and it was like, you know what, it was I don't want to say bad luck. He played 17 games, not really bad luck, but do we agree that the defense is serviceable enough next year to win a Super Bowl?
No.
Again,
it started when Burrow was, whether you want to say healthy or not, the Bengals were not great against the run. The chunk play was always an option, and getting to the quarterback was always an issue. I'm sorry, not an option, an issue. And I don't know if that if you look back at last season, excluding Joe Burrow's injury, if you have to say it was the offense or the defense the bigger problem, the major issue here is the defense. Major issue. That's why Sweet Lou is still our defensive coordinator right now. He's not getting another job this year.
Yeah.
Because he just wasn't good enough. And the defense needs I'm not going to say a massive overhaul, but we can't have guys like Nick Scott out there anymore. It can't happen.
What changes though? I mean, do you go out and you get a 3-tech, or do you go out and get a obviously somebody that's going to shore up the edge opposite of Hendrickson? Because that's the thing that I keep falling back on, is that some people are suggesting that you can go and find T's replacement in the draft, and I guess the question becomes ultimately then when do you find that replacement? Because it seems as if they're trying to utilize some of that draft capital to shore up things perhaps on the defensive side of the ball.
I think if you were to go all in on T. Higgins, if you were to go in, you sign him, you extend him, you sign and extend Jamar, I think there's a world out there where in a Bengals offense with Joe Burrow and all these guys, they can hide the deficiencies you see defensively. I think there is a world for that. And I think that's what it comes down to, is do you think this offense can overpower a defense that is bad? And Reed puts in a couple good points in here. It's a very, 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 very young defense. I'd be curious to see how young they are compared to the rest of the league. I don't have that answer. but certainly one of the younger defenses in the NFL.
Yeah, the back end for sure.
And if you give them a year, I guess, and again, it kind of sucks to say this because the NFL is different than the MLB. In the MLB, you're like, all right, well, let's give the rookies a couple years to develop, right? In the league. And the NFL, it's quicker. You got to go, especially if you have the guy. And when you have the guy, and that guy is Joe Burrow, you have to compete immediately. So you're playing a waiting game with all these young guys, but at the same time, I think that's how you have to do it. You have to see next year what you have, because as of right now, we really don't know what we have. We got Trey Hendrickson, and we got a couple decent corners. Outside of that, I don't know what we have a ton, really.
Yeah, I mean, for me, as it stands right now, they are not in a position to win a Super Bowl. I know that Joe Burrow's the window is his whole career, but they are not the best roster in the AFC right now. They are not even.
They might
like
not
the,
need to
the
have the
second or
best
third.
roster to win the Super Bowl. To be fair, though, like,
right?
No.
The
49ers have proven that doesn't. You could be the world's best roster and not win at all, and then you find a team like the Chiefs, who people have considered to be terrible, and I was part of that bandwagon. I thought the Chiefs were terrible, and I still think the Chiefs somehow they have the Tom Brady magic. They have this Patriot magic to where they just find ways to win games, and sometimes I feel like they beat teams with the front of their jersey at this point. Like there's no reason as to why the Chiefs should have been able to walk into Baltimore and win that football game under any circumstance. And they did it. To give them credit, they did it.
Right.
But to your point, though, what is it that this team needs to somewhat shore up and do, and it is even feasible to do, to where that's the question I have, is if the answer is no, which is what you're saying, and some people my answer might be yes, is that how do you let a guy to where you have some value, you have something of value, and if you don't have any chance of getting a long-term deal done, how do you not cash in on something? Like,
I mean, I agree with you.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. To me, the answer is very simple, and it's just you got to cut ties with guys that that you love. I mean, can you imagine? I just want to put yourself in this position, right? You were the Chiefs who had just lost a Super Bowl, and they had a Hall of Fame receiver, and they cut ties with him by trading him to get value from him. A Hall of Fame receiver, one of the most dangerous threats in the NFL, probably the best receiver at the time. And they traded his ass away, and they went ahead and they started investing on the defense because their defense was getting torched. And look where they're at now. That's what the Bengals have been trying to do the last couple seasons, investing heavily in the first couple rounds in the draft, getting guys like Dax Hill, Miles Murphy. But you have to get talent that helps you right away. That's the number one part. It's either in free agency you get value contracts that outperform those contracts, like they did to get to the Super Bowl, or you hit on the draft. And now it's been very easy for the Bengals to hit on the draft, which is why they got to the Super Bowl with Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. The last couple seasons, it's not been that easy. It's not been straightforward for them.
Unless Duke Tobin is just telling fibs. He's suggesting that when they tag somebody, they are not in the business of trading them. That's not what their motto is. Yet, when you look at the headlines around the league, the Kansas City Chiefs, oh, by the way, they just signed arguably maybe could be the biggest impact punter in the entire NFL. And they turn around, and now there's reports that says the Chiefs plan to franchise tag L'Jarius Sneed. Yet, both sides are open to a trade. They're saying that publicly. They're not like saying, well, by the letter of the law, theoretically, really, in the way that the franchise tag works, when you franchise tag a guy, we want him on the team. To be fair, last season, to be fair, Duke Tobin did say they can go out and find their own in regards to T. Higgins, suggesting that there was no chance they were trading T. Higgins. This year, he didn't really say that, to be fair, to Duke Tobin. But when you watch the Chiefs go out, and to your point, they decide they're going to trade a guy like Tyreek Hill. And then now you look at a report, they just won a Super Bowl, and you could make the argument that the biggest reason that they won the Super Bowl was because of the back end of their defense and how great their defense was, and Snead was a big part of that. Yet now they're talking about the opportunity of franchise tagging this guy and trading him because in their mind, they inevitably know that they're not going to get a long-term deal done, so they're going to try to get something back rather than nothing.
Right.
And that's what all this comes down to. They've messed this up time and time again. And I know it's not, this is where perhaps I need to do more of my homework. But this is not just Jesse Bates. This has been guys before them.
Oh, yeah.
There's a laundry list of names. I don't know if you have them off the top of your head.
There's like Kevin Zeitler. There's Whitworth is an older player, but there was like Jonathan Joseph, Takeo Spikes. You want to go lower level guys like Mohamed Sanu and Marvin Jones. Trying to think of another couple players off the top of my head, but did I say Kevin Zeitler?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's just guys that they have developed and let walk for nothing. And that's just not good business. It's not good business. And they're going to make the same mistake again. And that's the difference between them and a championship level team. The Chiefs are going to get value from L'Jarius Sneed, whether it's a contract or trade. They're going to. They're going to get something from that. And they're not going to get anything from T, and that's a shame.
Well, we'll see. I mean, it's not over yet, and I think that the draft will reveal as well some of the notions that they might believe, right? And that, to be fair, I don't know how difficult it would be to trade after the draft because some teams kind of are trying to figure out what holes they have before they go into the draft, and then when they go into the draft, there's going to be some teams that are going to make a decision that they're going to try to fulfill those holes. I know a lot of teams are going to get there and they're going to say, hey, we're taking best player available, et cetera, et cetera. I think that that's true to a certain extent, but at the same time, you know, if somebody falls all the way down to the Bengals in it and it turns out to be, you know, safety or something like that, the Bengals aren't drafting the best player available at that point. They shouldn't. I don't want to say they won't, but they shouldn't. And I don't think that many teams actually do draft best player available. I think they draft best player available with a certain amount of position groups, clearly, which I guess you could say that is best player available. But my main point to all of this is saying that if you don't find a trade candidate before the draft, I feel like it might be increasingly more difficult to find a trade candidate after the draft. And maybe not. Maybe one of these teams thinks that they're going to get Marvin Harrison Jr., and they don't get him, and they have to get somebody else. And then, therefore, they're looking for a top-level wide receiver, and they're willing to give up future picks. But then again, we get back to the notion of, what is this window? I mean, we want to sit here and act like this window's forever. And I don't see it. I really don't.
The window's not forever. But, again, we still have a little bit of time here. To end the show, if that's okay, I would like to have
cherry
a
on top.
A cherry on top, Casey. I think I told
Presented
you. By United Dairy Farmers. It's the best place in the world to get ice cream, to get coffee, to get gasoline. They do have gasoline pumps, snackies,
donuts,
snicky snacks, donuts.
Breakfast sandwiches?
Sure. They got hot dogs in there. They got hot dogs.
Protein bars.
Oil. I said oil. Now, this is breaking news.
You said gas.
Breaking news. Baby Gronk has retired. If you're unfamiliar with Baby Gronk's work, good for you. Because, again, I don't know who this father is, but probably should be in jail for what he does to this kid. But anyway, Baby Gronk, the football player, who's, I believe, like 7 years old, has retired from the game that he loves. Tough scenes, but play the clip.
I apologize to my teammates, coaches, and to the fans that believe in me. Pressure is too much. My dad forced all this on me. How do I enjoy football anymore? I will be stepping away from the game I used to love.
All right, so that's Baby Gronk. Many of you may or may not know who that is. Clearly, he's become relatively famous because of, for the most part, his parent. And when I say parent, his dad, we kind of became a little overly excessive of trying to get this guy on shows and make fame of his son. And certainly, I think many people might look at that and watch it and say, well, see what happened. Look at his dad. I'm not buying it for a second. You know, I can smell it in the air. I can sniff it out from a mile away. That is nothing more than a bit. That's a good opportunity to try to get people to bring him up, a good opportunity to try to raise his fame even more and more. He's going to make a comeback. That guy is going to be probably more comeback, retire than Brett Favre.
Yeah, I think he's done it a couple times already.
So I'm going to go out on a limb and just say that what I just watched was not the truth. He will be back. And you know what? Hopefully at some point the shtick will wear off with the dad and it'll all just kind of mellow out. The kid can be a kid and he'll be able to play high school football. And maybe if he's good enough, maybe he'll play college. And from that point forward, best of luck. It's tough. The NFL, make it in professional sports in general, is just it's so unlikely that for those that are naive enough to think that, you know what, this kid's going to make the professional sports. I don't want to knock it too overly bad because I think that some of that builds character. I think some of that's trying to be a good parent. Whether you're actually being a good parent or not, some would debate that. But you're at least actively involved in your kid's life. You want the best for them, theoretically. Maybe you could argue that some parents don't. But my main point to all of that is saying this. I just hope the kid can find a way to get his own self-identity, his own self-worth at some point, and it's not just this shtick of him being baby Gronk.
I agree.
We shall see.
I agree.
But this show does run from 10 sometimes kind of 10:02 today, to 12 p sometimes today's 12:07. We shall see what happens tomorrow. It's a busy sports day tonight. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about tomorrow, and we'll do our very best to entertain you the best we can for the 2 hours that we will be on. And that is, again, as a reminder, tomorrow. This has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Today is Wednesday, which means, for those that are members, there is box lunch. Take care, everybody.